Hello everyone and welcome back to the FinTech Times. We're here at day 2 of the MoneyLIVE summit here in London, and right now I'm joined by Michalis. How are you, Michalis?
I'm very well, thank you, Tyler.
Thank you. Are you enjoying day 2?
Yes, it's been a very interesting day, a lot of exciting conversations.
Oh, well, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, before we get going on our chat, I think it'd be really great just to have you introduce yourself to our viewers and tell them a bit about where you come from.
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Michaelides, bit of a mouthful, but that's what it is. I'm Business Development and Sales Director for BPC Group. BPC is a Switzerland-based solution provider for the issuing and acquiring space. So we are a service provider to an infrastructure service provider, I should say, with quite a global footprint. We have a presence in about 100 markets around the world, and we're really excited to be here, be part of this.
Brilliant. Well, we're very happy to have you here with us today.
Thanks.
You know, like this event that we're at today, it's all about FinTech and how FinTech has changed from 3 years ago, where it currently sits at and where it's going at in the future. So it's a very interesting time to be at an event like this and to be rubbing shoulders with some of the industry's experts.
Absolutely.
So it's I think on that note of change, I think it's really important to take into consideration the impact of the pandemic on the industry. And when specifically we look at FinTech and more specifically PayTech, we notice that there have been a lot of changes that have been the result of the pandemic. How do you see the pandemic driving payment innovation?
Sure. I think it was very much a catalyst in the space of payments, especially infrastructure providers such as ourselves. We had to react almost instantly to the new reality. So we had, it was very interesting and very exciting at the same time. We had to accelerate the rate of innovation and the rate of implementation to cope with the reality that people had to find alternative ways to transact and instantly almost. So it's been a very interesting time for us. It was a period of adoption of lots of new mechanisms to pay, and our job was to help our customers, who are primarily banks or service providers, PSPs, etc., to cope with these new demands. So we worked with clients who had to implement almost immediately a Deliveroo-like model to cope with the requirements of their consumer base. We've had to respond to surging demand for contactless transactions, for example. As you know, I mean, both in the UK and across the world, even in places that were cash dependent, such as Germany, for example, contactless went from almost a peripheral product to a mainstream product instantly overnight. So it was a very interesting time, and definitely for the payments business, for the infrastructure part of the business, at least, it acted as a very positive catalyst.
It's interesting that you should talk about the shift in payments infrastructure, because we've seen, as you said with contactless just then, we've seen the rise of a lot of different forms of PayTech. Not necessarily the birth of new forms of PayTech, but definitely the rapid acceleration of it. I'm just interested to know, in terms of all of the different payment models, which ones you're most excited to see in 2022?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's been a very interesting time, and a lot of new forms have emerged. And one of the interesting things, the pandemic being global, it has actually forced people to look at how other markets are coping with the element of payments. And what has emerged is that there are emerging markets where some very interesting applications have already been taking place and have been maturing. And we think of ourselves in other parts, like in Europe, we weren't really accustomed to them. I mean, embedded finance is obviously kind of a buzzword these days, and it will continue to be, because it is the process of implementing the payments infrastructure in new and innovative places so that you can make the whole process seamless and frictionless. But also other elements like the super apps. I mean, super app is a new element that's just emerged in our, let's say, Western lingo only recently, but it's been up and running, and it's been very influential in some markets like China or Indonesia. We are very active in the Indonesian market, and we have super apps are driving the market there. QR code payments, wallet-based payments, all of these payment methods are going to becoming, I should say, very mainstreamed and very prevalent, and we're very excited to see that, because we are also very well positioned to cope with that. So
yes, it sounds like you're really sort of in deep with the best of the industry. When we've been discussing payments, we've been looking a lot at consumer payments.
Yeah.
So you mentioned things like QR codes, contactless, things like that. What about the changes that we've seen in business payments?
I think that's actually a very good observation. And especially if we link it back to the pandemic, the consumer part was a more, let's say, instant requirement, and it reacted very quickly. I mean, a good example being the contactless part again, where it was immediately raised, and it was easy to implement because the infrastructure was already there. But you're right, there's been a lag in terms of the way businesses are reacting to the new reality, and I think we're going to see a second wave of innovation coming up soon after the consumer, which we just experienced, we are currently experiencing, I should say. I think we're seeing, and we are already beginning to see the beginnings of it. You're seeing a lot of SME-based applications and solutions emerging, both from challengers, so challenger banks that are moving into that space, or even traditional banks that are launching their own SME-focused solutions, because they realize that there is a very large unaddressed segment right now that's looking to adapt to the new digital realities. And so I think that is going to be very much a growth area in the coming few years.
Oh yes, definitely. I think the rise in SMEs, and especially micro businesses, is really going to be one of the main drivers of that. You mentioned a little bit at the beginning of this conversation, you delved into embedded finance, which of course is a very hot topic in the industry at the moment. But I was just wondering where you saw the paytech venturing outside of the realms of traditional fintech. Like, how would it be more applicable in other areas of life?
Yeah, I think there's going to be quite a few interesting developments going forward, and we are seeing this again. I would bring this experience. We've been very active in emerging markets, okay, and we are seeing a lot of these things that are already popping up in these markets, and I think we believe that they will also become mainstream in Europe and the UK as well. I mean, example, marketplaces is one classic one. So, we are actively involved in helping entire ecosystems run on marketplaces, whether it is an agribusiness where you bring in agricultural producers, buyers, and service providers to this market, to this ecosystem, all wanting to create a meaningful place of exchanging their products, where payment needs to be a part of it, a seamless, frictionless, almost invisible part, but to put it simply, somewhere where a farmer can actually produce, sell their products, buy the appropriate insurance for that products, buy material or fertilizer or whatever that is, in order to make sure that they can produce the product and bring it to market, and all happening in this ecosystem and marketplace where payment is essential, but not necessarily visible. I think these types of marketplaces will be popping up everywhere, wherever there is a group of common interests, where you can see value in bringing different players, different actors, let's say, into an ecosystem that makes sense. That will be very prevalent, and again, it is an area where we see a lot of experience, and we have a lot of experience in other markets. Mobility, I think, is something else that's going to come up in a very interesting way. I mean, examples. If you take it into the UK, for example, we know how Transport for London, for example, evolved through the years with the payment product, right? How do you access Transport for London into for your mobility needs within the city? Now imagine the next generation where you could actually have a payment mechanism embedded throughout your entire mobility journey, whether that is, driving into a station, parking at the station, taking the right train into the city, then using the tube, and then putting it all on the same ticket, and potentially using various solutions, various partnerships in order to enhance that journey, whether it is even buying a coffee at the right station, all inclusive within that same journey. It's a consumer experience, but ultimately it is driven by the underlying need, which is your mobility needs to go from X to Y. So we believe that you're going to see embedded payment elements in all facets of life, and that's, I think, is what's really interesting for our space. We are an infrastructure provider, but ultimately, it is payments is an essential part of the customer journey, whether that customer is a business or a consumer.
You're absolutely right, and it's something that I think this summit is really trying to bring home, is that fintech, and especially paytech, is so applicable to so many different areas of industry that it's really exciting to see. Unfortunately, Michalis, that's all we have time for today.
That's okay.
It's been absolutely fantastic to speak to you today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the summit.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to share this with you, and it's been a great summit.
Thank you very much.